Welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast.
Hello and welcome to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today we are going to discuss love and law, how prenuptial and postnuptial agreements work in South Carolina. Hey, what's up, Rhett? How are you?
Great, Kevin. We probably should rename this to Love, Hate, and the Law.
Love, hate, and the law. Got to include that one in there too.
Got to include that one. That's what we're trying to prevent, right?
Yeah, whether you're talking about getting married or already navigating the complexity of marriage, we want to get into these legal tools to help protect assets.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how to take pressure off of each other during the marriage. Just trying how to avoid problems if the marriage doesn't go how we all planned them to go, right? So let's talk about that a little bit, see how people can protect themselves.
All right, well, let's start with this. What are some of the most common misconceptions that you run across about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements?
Everybody likes to, Google it, fill out a form, do it themselves. Think if they write it on a piece of paper, what they're agreeing to, get it notarized, get it witnessed, that's going to be upheld in South Carolina. And that's just wrong. So we have statutory requirements that have to be followed. And if you don't follow those formalities, which do include lawyers, you have to have a lawyer in order for it to be enforced. If you don't have those formalities, and we'll talk about what that looks like here in a little bit, you don't have those, the paper's not worth what it's written on.
So can you explain what prenup and postnup agreements are and how they work in South Carolina in particular?
Yeah, it's kind of an insurance policy, really. It's that document that says in case this marriage goes badly and the couple no longer wants to be married anymore, it pre-decides how the divorce is going to look. It pre-decides whether there will be alimony or no alimony, what child support would look like, what asset and debt division would look like. It defines what is premarital property, what is marital property. It's really just it's a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint of how a couple wants their divorce to be handled. The hard part wants to be handled if and when they go through a divorce. So it saves a lot of money for clients, because if you've already pre-decided that, then at the end of the day, you're not having to fight over those things that we see people fight over, which in divorce is money, right? Talk about getting the actual divorce, but really in a divorce situation, it's either going to be money or the children. So with a prenup, which is a document you sign prior to the marriage, and a postnup is a document you sign after the marriage, it goes ahead and kind of sets forth the rules of engagement.
Is there a limit on how far after you get married you can do a postnuptial agreement?
No, you can do it
Whenever.
Yeah, just do it whenever. It's better to do it sooner rather than later, because you can't predict when you may get divorced. Funny story, this is an aside. I represented a couple one time, Kevin, that they got in a fight at the reception of their wedding. And as soon as they got back, it was a destination wedding. We filed for divorce. So, they didn't have time to do a postnup in that situation. So
Can't you just get an annulment at that point?
Sooner rather than later.
Can't it just be an annulment at that point?
There's certain things. If you have sex, if you consummate the marriage in the way we have it in where I live, that's all you have to have, unless there's some other type of coercion or mental deficiency on somebody's part. But yeah, crazy stories. You never know.
That is wild. Yeah,
that's the whole reason I do this work, Kevin. It's just for the crazy stories, right?
Just you're just compiling them for your memoirs,
it makes my life look halfway normal sometimes. But things happen.
Sure. So what type of assets or issues can be addressed in a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement?
Yeah, everything. Really everything. So you have the law requires both spouses to have lawyers, requires both sides to make financial declarations, show what you owe and what you own. And lots of times we see businesses, when people are self-employed on their own business, we'll go ahead and deal with those in a prenup or even a postnup. Homes, assets that someone had prior to marriage that they've accumulated. We just try to separate what a court later on in a divorce can divide and what the court can't divide. We label those, we have definitions of what's going to be considered a premarital asset, which the court can't divide, and a postmarital after divorce asset that the court can divide. Same with debts as well. So yeah, rules of engagement, like I mentioned, is we go ahead and identify what these parties have, what they may have, even though we can't tell the future and figure out what they may have. We can use language to define, at a certain time, if a property or an asset is bought, and we can define that is going to be considered an asset that the court can divide, which would be a postmarital asset, or can't divide a non-marital asset.
Do you feel, your personal opinion, that everybody should get a prenup or a postnup?
Personal story, I'm on my second marriage, and so I'm married a little bit later in life, my second time, and we talked about it, but my wife said, no, this is forever. We're not going to get divorced, and if we do a postnup, then that may be kind of a parachute and may lead us to divorce. So some people think like that, right? Some people, they've been burned a couple of times in their prior marriages, and I think they need that. People bring in lots of assets in second marriage, sometimes first marriages, and they don't want to have to go through the complexity of dividing those assets later on. To each his own. I think it's a good thing to have, and I don't mean that just because I'm a lawyer who drafts them, but it can go ahead and kind of set the stage for what to expect. But some people don't like them, don't want them. Hey, that's okay too. Stay married, and then you won't have to worry about it.
No, it won't matter. Yeah, I think a lot of people look at it too as like because like one of the things is like, how do you have that conversation, like with your fiance or something, and a lot of people look at it as like a slight, like, oh, I don't want to have to give you too much if we get divorced. But you're saying like the real reason for it is to make the divorce easier.
Yeah, it makes the divorce easier. If you're getting into a marriage, here's a little public service announcement. If you're getting into a marriage and you're worried about marrying this person, and the first thing that comes to mind is, if I need a prenup, is this person, I don't trust them, don't get married. Right?
Yeah.
That's a very
We're going to do a whole marriage counseling episode.
Yeah. That's for another episode. We can help you with that. We can help you with that too. Some people, it is a very hard conversation to have. It's not a traditional conversation to have. You just kind of have to gauge it. It may go ahead and decide, you talk with your potential spouse about it. They may not want to get married to you. So, be a little cautious if you bring that conversation up.
Be careful. I could totally see, like, if you're on your second or third marriage, I think that's an easier conversation there. Yeah. I've been through this before. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you're married and then you bring up the postnup conversation, your spouse may wonder what's going on behind their back they need to be worried about. So I would do it sooner rather than later.
Well, I'd have to be like, listen, to my wife, I'd have to be like, listen, I talked to Rhett. He told me to do this. Take it up with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. As lawyers, we love to be scapegoats, blame it all on us. We're okay with that. Most people don't like us, but hey, we have thick skin.
Yeah, you have to, right? How enforceable are prenups and postnups in South Carolina, and what factors can affect their validity in court?
Yeah. What good's a piece of paper if it's not valid, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have lawyers. Both sides have to have legal representation, and both sides have to make full and accurate financial disclosures. People don't like doing that, but that is the law. People wonder why they have to have two lawyers. Well, that is the law. Mm-hmm. And the way it's designed is so that one party does not get taken advantage of by the other party. And that way also, when it comes before the court has to determine whether the document is valid, and lawyers have drafted it. It's more likely to be upheld because lawyers, we know the law. We know what needs to be in these documents. We know what holes we need to cover up, what gaps we need to close. So, and if you write that prenup or postnup out, you do it yourself, it's not going to be enforced.
Are there specific legal requirements or formalities that you have to meet for a prenup or postnup to be valid?
Yeah, just like I stated, the main thing, have lawyers, each side, full and financial disclosures. And, you don't want to get into a situation where it's later proven that you lied on your financial declaration, because that may kick it out altogether. So make sure you're truthful, because it is a sworn document under penalty of perjury when you fill out these financial declarations and you submit them with your prenup or your postnup. So even though you may think you're outsmarting someone, if it's later proven that you were not honest on that document or in that financial situation or statement, then it's going to be kicked out potentially.
What are some of the most common lies that you've seen?
Everybody lies about money, right?
Of course.
Everybody lies. And it's going to be in a postnup more likely than not, a a prenup on a second, third, fourth marriage that, one side doesn't want the other side to know what they have. Well, why do the document, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and make that disclosure to the other side, because otherwise they may get something that you didn't want them to get anyway, only because you lied about it in advance. The document is meant to protect both sides. You go ahead and predefine how things are going to be divided. So the document's no good if you lie, and it's going to be about something financial. It always is.
And to your point earlier, if you're feeling like you should lie on a prenup, like maybe think about who you're marrying and why you're getting married.
Yeah. Do you really want to get married if you're really worried about that person? I think that's one of the big alarms, right? Big signal. Don't do it.
So when it comes to modifications, or even if you want it revoked after it's been signed, is there a process for that?
Yeah, you sign another document that says, in essence, we revoke or we rescind the prenup or the postnup. That's the easiest way to do it. What I would recommend is sit down with lawyers again, because we do it, and sign a document that says, hey, this postnup or this prenup was signed on such and such a date. The lawyers all had independent counsel, and we've elected to modify it, go through all the same requirements of having financial declarations again, and then have the lawyers form the document so it says what you want it to say, and then sign it, and you should be good to go.
What's the most common reason for making modifications?
Sometimes it's for tax reasons. Sometimes it's to protect assets. Somebody may have a business, and they brought in partners, and maybe the partner wants to have some assurance that they're not going to be doing business with their partner's ex-spouse. I see that lots of times. People, assets change, right? Somebody may have some large home and they sold that prior to marriage, or it was considered a non-marital asset, and they just want to clarify the language a little bit better. That's usually the main reason why people want to come in. But usually it's where we have a business situation and they just, two people are getting ready to start a business. And there's a lot of money involved and a lot at stake, and they want to make sure they're not going to be fighting an ex-spouse sometime later on down the road.
Yeah, because in our last episode we talked about wills and things like that, and I understand why a life event would cause you to want to take another look at that, but prenup, postnup, is it mostly percentages anyway? Is it mostly just kind of dictating some terms to where there's like less of a chance that you really need to revisit it?
Yeah, for the most part. Obviously we can't tell the future. I can't tell what somebody's going to buy in the future. So we go ahead and predefine things. For instance, time frames. We say, okay, anything bought from date of marriage forward is going to be considered a marital asset. Everything that you own prior to marriage is a non-marital asset. If you had a non-marital asset prior to marriage and you sell it and then turn around and buy a new asset during the marriage because you use that non-marital asset to buy a new asset, we'll still consider that to be a non-marital asset because you used the money from the non-marital asset to buy an asset during the marriage. So we typically, just speak in general terms. Now, if somebody's bringing a house into the marriage or a business in the marriage, we'll go ahead and set that aside and say this is specifically considered a non-marital asset. Lots of times what people do, they know they're going to buy a house during the marriage and each side is bringing in a certain amount of money. They may say, okay, the husband brought in 60% of the money for this house and the wife brought in 40%, so we're going to divide it that way. Everybody does it a little bit differently. Every asset's different. So sometimes we use just general language. Sometimes we use specific numbers. Sometimes we use percentages. Percentages are probably easier because it's hard to define numbers in the future, not know what may occur. But I would say for the most part, it's just specific general language to cover time frames.
Now, are there certain situations where you like the terms of a prenup or postnup could be, I don't know, like nullified or not taken into account, like whether it's infidelity, whether it's spousal abuse? Is there anything that changes it down the road?
Not really, unless you predefine it. I've had prenups and postnups that we have actually added in there that if one side has an affair, it nullifies the whole document. But if you don't have that specific language in there, it's probably not going to be overturned if you followed all the requisite requirements. Did your financial declarations, you were honest, because most of the time we usually say if the marriage ends in divorce, who cares? But there's certain occasions where people want that specific language in there that says if somebody cheats or somebody's abusive or somebody gets addicted to drugs or alcohol, then things change.
What advice would you give to couples in South Carolina who might be considering a prenup or a postnup agreement, but are unsure about whether it's the right choice for them?
First, marriage counseling, right? Premarital counseling, do that first. If you're concerned about what may happen in a divorce, I think the conversation becomes, why do you think you may get divorced? What does that look like? What problems do we think may arise? And then just express, put it all out on the table, express with your spouse to be or your current spouse why you want that document. What are your concerns? Typically, people lie about their concerns, right? I think you just need to go ahead and put it out there, because why enter a marriage, which is supposed to be for life, if you're going to start off being fraudulent or lying to the other spouse? It's just, that's a bad recipe, I think.
Yeah, that's not a good way to start. Well, thanks for tuning in to Off the Record, a legal podcast with attorney Rhett Burney. For more information or to connect with Rhett, you can visit rhettburney.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and leave us a review in the comments. Hey, Rhett, always great to see you. Thanks so much.
Till next time, Kevin, take care.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.